So our first guest today is Jean Jennings, who has 20 years of experience in email marketing. She runs a email marketing agency called Email Optimization Shop, where she helped more than 100 brands, and she is also general manager at Only Influencer, which is a community for email marketers. She is also a professor at Georgetown University, and she's the chair at Email Innovation Summit. Let me welcome Jean Jennings. Hey, Jean, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. It's great to be here with you.
It's nice that you joined, and I'm waiting for all the information, all the knowledge that you have gathered in your last 20 years of experience to share with our audience. I know that I might have not did a lot of justice to your introduction. Why don't you say about your 20 years of experience to our audience?
Sure. Thank you. Well, it was a lovely introduction, so thank you. And I'm excited to be here. It was so great to see where people are from. There are so many places on the list that I've been and so many places that I want to go. So thank you all for being here. But yeah, you know, I kind of grew up with the email industry. I was one of the earliest people writing and speaking about email marketing. It's such a great community. And especially back then, everyone was sort of trying things and then sharing what they learned to help other people. And that's one of the things that we really try to continue with the Only Influencers community, because there is still more to learn about email. I think that, you know, my kind of niche market is I work with companies that have successful programs, and I help them take those programs to the next level, make them more effective and more profitable. So I do a lot with A/B split testing. I do a lot with strategy. We do a lot with content marketing, because really the best email programs are not just buy. It's about building relationships with your email subscribers, and that's really what we work on. And I've had the honor to work with a lot of great brands: PayPal, Hasbro, Verizon, Synchrony Financial, Capital One, Dartmouth College. So it's really been a great ride, and it's exciting. And you know, I still love it even so many years later, which is really great.
Yeah, that's truly amazing. It looks like that you started your career with email or the digital marketing industry itself. So in this last 20 years, what are the things that have changed or not changed? And what are the things that you are looking towards to happen in future?
Yeah, so, you know, it's been a really fun ride. We've seen so many changes. I think one thing that really is sort of a double-edged sword for email is the fact that it's so inexpensive to do, and it's not really that hard to make it profitable. And so I think a lot of companies are like, well, our email marketing is profitable. We don't need to invest there. We'll spend the money on social or on whatever the new hot, bright, shiny thing is. And yet, if they put just a little bit more time, effort, thought, expertise into the email marketing, they could double or triple their profits quite easily. And so that's really what I help companies to do. But I think that's really the future. I think, you know, the first couple of years, it was just getting people, you know, to do it. And then it was sort of to kind of get the best practices in place. And now we're at the point where if you're doing email marketing, you really should be looking with every cent to optimize and improve your performance. Email has been the #1 channel in terms of ROI for many, many years, and I don't see that changing. Email just becomes more and more important as a communication tool, and I think that's going to continue. And the companies that win are the ones that are optimizing it. Quick Saxa to Jackie, and a quick hello to my friend Keisha, who I see in the chats.
Yeah, hello to Jackie and Isha. So, Jean, that has been a very important point, that email has been a very cost-effective solution, and that's why people don't optimize it. And my next question is regarding that. Like, for any strategy to work, you need to understand what metrics to measure first and what to improve. So, I hear a lot about open rate and click rate, etc. What according to you are the right metrics to measure and improve?
Open rates and click-through rates are fine. Those are diagnostic metrics. And gosh, we could have a whole session on open rate after Apple MPP and what they did there. But really, the metrics you need to be looking at as key performance indicators aren't those. They are things like conversion rate or a revenue metric. So my very favorite metric in the whole world is revenue per email, which is really easy to calculate. You just take the revenue generated by the email campaign and you divide it by the number of emails that you sent. Typically, I take out the bounces because bounces aren't going to generate you any revenue. It's a great metric to use if you're doing an A/B split test. You can do an apples to apples comparison on two different versions of creative to see which one won. But it gives you you're actually measuring what matters to the company, which is revenue. Now, a lot of people I work with, a lot of people I talk to say, but we're not trying to generate revenue for email. We're generating leads, or we're looking for some other non-revenue metric. In that case, you should be using conversion rate. And that's also very easy to calculate. You define the conversion, whatever it is that keeps the lights on at your business, whatever you need them to do. So if you're generating leads, then someone who fills out a lead form, that would be considered a conversion. You divide that by, again, the non-bounce send. So the quantity you sent minus the number of bounces, and that's your conversion rate. It's really, really, really important to use the right KPIs. I've actually done research and I've published it on my blog, which is emailopshop.com or emailoptimizationshop.com, that shows that if you're trying to do something past the email, sell a product or generate a lead, if you use click-through rate as your KPI, you're only going to get it right about 7% of the time. Because just because something has the highest click-through rate doesn't mean that that follows through to be the highest conversion rate or the highest revenue email rate. Open rate is the same. A lot of people who test subject lines use open rate. Very bad idea. You're only going to get that right about 20% of the time. And so you really want to make sure you're using one of these business metrics, revenue per email or conversion rate, to measure the success of your program.
Those are accurate points, and this is a philosophy on which Mailmodo has been built as well. At Mailmodo, we focus on the conversion rate or the number of lead generation or number of the feedback the user marketers receive, and that has been the reason why we built Mailmodo, where we bring the end action or the landing page right within the email. But the question that most marketers will still ask is, how do we improve the conversion rate, or how do we improve the revenue per 1,000 emails? So what are some of the experiments or examples that you can share with our audience?
So yeah, the way to get those numbers up, which every business should be working on, by the way, is to use scientific method to do A/B split testing. And that's a lot of what I do with my clients. So what that means is, it's easy to say, and I've had people do this. Well, they told me to do a test, so I tested red buttons versus green buttons. That's not scientific method for a test. You're not approaching testing strategically. So you really want to think through a hypothesis for why what you're testing is going to improve performance. And you want to make sure you structure the test in a way that you're going to get a clean read, a clean result for that. So one of my favorite examples from early in my career is I was actually at the Barnes & Noble one weekend with my coffee, and I picked up a book on the psychology of color, and it was fascinating. If you've never looked into the psychology of color, I highly recommend it. And I was working back then with a client that had a financial advisory publication that we were selling, that we were marketing. And I realized that red is the color of stop signs. Red is the color of stoplights, you have to stop. Red is the color of, if you're in the red financially, that's a bad thing. And all of their buttons in their emails were red because red was their brand color. So I started to think that, wow, maybe we should test that, because it could be subconsciously that is, depressing response. So then I was like, well, what could we test against it? So I started thinking again with my color book in front of me, and I was like, well, green is the color of go on a stoplight. Green is also the color of money, and what we're talking to people about is helping them make money from their investments. So that led me to test green buttons instead of red, which did not go over well with the brand because that was not part of their brand color scheme, and yet it improved response. So those are the kinds of ways you want to approach testing. It's not just testing something for the heck of it. It's testing something with a real intent and a real belief that what you're testing is going to improve performance.
That is very interesting insight actually, and the book Psychology of Color is actually a must read for every marketer, I believe. Very interesting insight. And when we were starting Mailmodo, the whole book actually helped us a lot, and that's why we chose such vibrant colors for Mailmodo. So you talked about A/B testing and how this colors helped you achieve better results. In general, what are the different types of A/B tests that a marketer should do, or is there a checklist, or is there like top examples that you can share with our audience?
That's a great question. So I published an article on my blog post. If you go there, you'll find it, about 15 different types of tests to do. And really what they are is 15 different elements you can test. So you want to make sure that you are testing a lot of different elements in your email program. I think probably the most tested element is subject line, because it's easy to test subject line, or people perceive that it's easy to do. But you're rarely going to get a huge out of the ballpark lift from testing a subject line. You might. So you want to go deeper than that. And really what you want to do is take a look at your program and try to figure out where your program is weak. And then you want to test on those elements to see if you can make them stronger. So I do a lot of testing around the placement of images in an email. A lot of emails these days have these big hero images at the top. We often get a boost when we make that hero image either half width and put a rich text headline next to it, or when we put a headline on top of it. The reason being that many email clients still block images by default. So if you have a big header image at the top of your email, there's a good chance it's not going to be seen in the inbox. If it's not seen, there's a good chance people aren't going to engage. Do a lot of testing with landing pages. I know that seems like it's outside the world of email, but a lot of times the email is driving people to a landing page. And if that's what's leaky, if that's where you're losing people, you've got to fix that. Do a lot of testing around different approaches in body copy. Not all body copy for an email is the same. So you might have an approach that says, okay, this time we're going to talk about, the benefits of, the idea is you should put together a message map and have a list of different features, benefits, advantages that relate to your product. And then you can write different body copy based on different features, benefits, advantages. So there's a lot that you can test in email, and you really want to approach it strategically. Even subject lines, subject line tests, as much as they're overdone, we do test subject lines. You have to think about getting the most important information in the first 25 characters. And you also want to think about how the subject line plays with the pre-header text and the headline. When I'm writing copy for clients, I typically take those three elements together because they should all build on each other. They shouldn't be redundant. That's how you're going to get the most bang for your prime real estate.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting insight actually. And people need to do a lot of A/B testing, but when they're starting up, they don't even know where to start, what kind of emails to send, or where to start. Should they send a lot of promotional emails? Should they send automated emails, etc.? So you have worked with a lot of larger brands, but what are some of the learnings that a lot of young founders and young marketers can use to create their email strategy and email calendar?
Yeah. So I think it's really hard. I often get asked, well, do I do a promo or do I do a newsletter? Well, the answer is yes. You really want to have a mix of different content, different email types within your email stable, because different things may appeal to different people. And again, we said you want to be building relationships. So, I think if you're selling a product or service, it's good to start with a promotional email, maybe start with one promotional email a month, get you, kind of get going. Then maybe add in a newsletter. But you definitely want to have a mix of different types of content to go out. Automations can be very successful. I think it's funny, a couple years ago, like very few people were doing automations, and then it kind of took off and now everybody has an automated series. I'm actually just started working with a major university, and they have an automation series that lasts 2 years. And that's, I think, part of the problem. A lot of these automation series have been built with the very best of intentions, but it just, you have to make sure that you approach it strategically with a message map and think about what you're doing. This 2-year automation we're looking at, it just doesn't make any sense. And like I said, they had the best of intentions, but that's not really the best. So I like to start small do things, figure out, make them work, and then build on that. So I would start with some manual sends, some promos, and some newsletters, then do some automations, but start with some small automations. Do a 3-effort automation, see how it works. There's a lot you can learn by looking at the data. So for instance, oftentimes with something like a 3-effort automation, you might find that people are still responding to that 3rd effort. And that's when you know that you can put a 4th effort in after it. You might find that no one's responding to the 2nd effort, although they're responding to the 1st and 3rd. So maybe you nix the 2nd effort. So the idea is to start small and then tweak and build once you've had some success. Building out something really big, if you don't know if it's going to be successful, can be a real waste of time.
Very interesting. And Jean, so you talked a lot about automation. So, but it may vary for B2C company, for a B2B company. How, as a marketer, would I know that what kind of automation should I start with? Can you share some examples or framework to create the first 3 automation?
Sure. I do this with a lot of my clients, or I did a few years ago. But basically, you want to take a look at where the greatest opportunity is, and how much what the resources needed are going to be to stand up that automation. So typically when I work with clients, we'll identify different places that we can do automations, and then we'll score them. So we'll say, okay, so let's talk about, for instance, let's talk about a cart abandonment email. So cart abandonment emails, if you're in the e-commerce space, they can be huge revenue generators for you. So typically they have a very high return. Now that's assuming people are leaving things in their cart. If no one ever leaves anything in their cart, maybe not. They tend to be at a basic level pretty easy to stand up. And that's another thing I would say to you. If you say, well, you know, there's a huge opportunity in cart abandonment, it would take a lot of resources to customize that email with the items in the cart. But it would be pretty easy to stand up an automation that just reminds people that there are things in their cart. Maybe it has a list of things in the cart, or maybe it doesn't even have that. You should stand up that simple version and then put on your project roadmap to upgrade it to include, you know, the images of what's left in their cart and to be more specific. But that's really what you want to think about. You want to score things and figure out where is the biggest opportunity for revenue or conversions or whatever you're looking for. And then how many resources will it take to stand up? Typically, the biggest obstacle we face with automated programs is integration of data, which I think is actually becoming more and more of an issue. You need to have your systems tied together so that you can get that information. I had a client years ago that did an abandoned cart campaign manually, if you can imagine. So on a Friday afternoon, if the junior marketer on the team had a little time, and she was pretty busy, she would manually pull a list of the people who had left their carts with stuff in them. She would manually upload that to their email platform, and then she would hit send. It wasn't even really customized. It didn't tell what was in the cart. It just said there was stuff in your cart. And we found out that that manual process was generating like $16 for every email that they sent. So that was for them, and probably for most of us, if you could get $16 for every single email you sent, you'd probably be a rock star. So that was a pretty much a no-brainer to automate that program. So those are the other things you want to think about. Are you doing things manually that you really should be automating?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting use case that you mentioned, and how the personalization can help and identifying the opportunity to serve the user. That helps with the email marketing. So you gave the example of getting $16 for every dollar spent on email marketing. What is the best results have you got so far?
Wow. It really varies. You know, I was working with a client recently, and we were doing a lot of testing. It was actually with their Christmas campaign. And we actually, on a single email, got an increase of 1,221% in the revenue per email number. So if you do the math on that, that's like more than 10 times as high. It blew it away. Yeah, it was one of those things where you're like, is this right? Like, we double checked the data, because we've been getting really good returns. I mean, the average return for that campaign was about 188% return on increase in revenue. So that's like almost 3 times the revenue of the control that for the test version. The median was about 50%, still pretty good lift. But yeah, that was pretty amazing. And that was really an interesting case. That was an email, and it was for an e-commerce company. So they were selling things directly. And that particular email was really interesting because it was selling a product, and it had a lot of copy. So they had the image of the product, but then they had a lot of information about the product, and there were bullet points. And the feeling was that this product was so special, and they wanted to tell people how special this product was. And what we actually did was we took out all of that copy, and we just did it like we did a lot of their other emails, where it was just like, hey, here's the product, here's what it's called, here's the price, click here to learn more. And that is what we got. That is what generated, you know, this incredible lift when we just took all that copy out of it and let the image of the product kind of stand on its own. So it's interesting the way those things work out. You know, that was, like I said, I expected we'd get a lift, but I didn't expect we'd get that kind of a lift. So that's why we test.
Yeah, so that's a very impressive result actually. And while some brands are getting such impressive results, there are a lot of marketers who still think that email marketing is not for them. So what is wrong? What are they doing wrong? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is, again, it's profitable. And you know, I always joke, I've been on so many panels where I'm on one side alone, and there's three people who are younger than I am on the other side. And the topic is email is dead. You know, social media is going to replace it. Oh, gosh, I was on a panel where they said RSS was going to replace email years ago. It just never stopped. So I think, you know, one of the problems with email is it's kind of the old, you know, grandparent of the digital marketing space, and it throws off revenue. And so people are like, well, I'm good. It's profitable. It's throwing off revenue. Let's take the revenue that it generates, and let's play with, threads, for instance. But honestly, you should take a good portion of the revenue you generate from email and reinvest it in email. Bring in, a consultant. I consult for companies. There's a lot of people out there who consult. Send your email team to a conference. I run the Email Innovation Summit, which is in Las Vegas every summer. It's amazing. We have all these speakers. Make sure your people are reading email newsletters. I publish my own email newsletter through Email OpShop. I publish an email newsletter through Only Influencers that stays up on things. Read blogs. OI has a great blog. We have like 25 industry experts who contribute to that blog. There's always something interesting there. Have them join Only Influencers, $200 a year, but just a great investment to help your people stay up with what's happening that's new, to get some ideas. You can't get ideas for testing if you're chained to the desk, focused on the next send constantly. You have to get out of that. You have to look at what other people are doing to get ideas. You have to do things like go drink coffee and read books that you're not reading for the idea of your email campaign, but that will spark ideas. So that's really kind of the key, is giving your people the ability to get outside of what you're doing with email and see what other people are doing. There's so many great things out there that you can learn from that can spark ideas.
Definitely. And I will be looking forward to join you in Las Vegas for the Email Innovation Summit. I've heard good things about it, and I'm looking forward to it. It happens next time. You mentioned that there are a lot of campaign ideas that people should look for to implement in their business. Can you give some examples that unbelievably or surprisingly worked for you, and maybe it can help our audience too?
Sure. There's just so many places to get ideas. It's funny, when I work with clients, we typically start with a kickoff, and often we'll often do a brainstorming of idea sessions and just get all the ideas out there on the board. So those things are really, really useful. I think that the key is just always to be looking and thinking. We all have an inbox where we get email. You can learn a lot from what other people are sending in email. And I think a lot of people get tied in. I do a lot of private workshop trainings as well. And it's always a little bit disappointing when someone says, well, we're the healthcare industry, so we want only healthcare examples. We don't want to see any examples from other industries. And you're really shutting yourself off if you do it that, because you never know where the next great idea is going to come from in email. And so you've got to be looking in your inbox, subscribe to your competitors' emails if you don't, see what they're doing, but be careful. I had a client that was so fixated on the competitor that everything they did, we did. And a lot of it didn't work. And so I don't necessarily think your competitor knows more than you do, but it's good to see what they're doing and look at other industries, figure out, really good emails is a great resource. It's a swipe file of emails to take a look at and get ideas from. So there's a lot of different ways to get ideas.
Yeah, definitely. Like looking at your own inbox or really good emails is probably the best ways to look for. There are probably other marketing channels as well, like people doing a lot of Facebook ads or TikTok ads, etc. Do you take inspiration or ideas from those as well and implement in your emails?
Definitely. So, I teach at Georgetown, but my class isn't email marketing, it's digital marketing. So because of that, it gives me a great excuse to keep up with all these other channels. So you should definitely be looking at what's happening. Video and email is really big. And so just to be clear, email clients don't really support the video playing in the email very well. There's a couple companies out there that are sort of doing it. It's not 100% yet, but just putting a screenshot of a video and having people click through to view it on a landing page that has the call to action and the rest of the information to drive whatever action you're looking for can be very, very effective. But you definitely want to take a look at what's happening on TikTok and Threads and what's out there to see what you can steal. The other thing you want to think about is, email's not an island. Some of the best email programs are leveraging social media. The other thing that plays really well with email is SMS. Probably a year ago, I wrote an article about the Dave Matthews Band, which is my brother. Shout out to my brother Mark, his very favorite artist, and so he goes to shows, and I've been to shows with him. When I signed up for email from them, they also asked if I would sign up for SMS, which is great. And then they came back to me about a month later via SMS, not email, to ask when my birthday was. And that's the perfect sort of thing to do. That kind of an ask in an email, it's too small to send an email dedicated to it. If you send it as part of a larger email, it's going to get lost in the mix. It's a simple question. People know the answer off the top of their heads. They were very descriptive. They said, we'd like to know when your birthday is to send you a little something special. Please write out the month. I thought not even, and they said, we don't need the year. I'm not even sure they needed the date. And so it was very easy to just type back April. So that's a great way to do progressive profiling for your email program, to get a little bit more data from people so that you can leverage that. And then sure enough, when April rolled around, I think I got a special recording. But think about things like that you can use other channels. I think too many companies now, they're using SMS, but basically they send the email and the SMS at the same time, which is sort of a waste. So leveraging it for other communications, especially those things that will help improve your email program, is a great way to use it. I was really disappointed because I thought that was going to be a thing they were going to do every month from the Dave Matthews Band, which I think would have been brilliant. And I actually have some clients where we're looking at standing that idea up now, that every month we go out to people via SMS and ask for one more piece of information that we're going to use to customize or personalize their communications. And SMS is great for that, as well as other things.
Yeah, progressive profiling is a brilliant idea, actually. A lot of Mailmodo's customers also use progressive profiling, especially because they can add forms in because of our AMP emails, right? And they ask questions one by one in several emails. They often also send quizzes. So it helps them a lot. And we have seen that it also helps them in engagement over a period of time as well.
Yes.
So that's a brilliant idea, actually. So my next question is one of the facts that you mentioned, that people face a lot of problem in getting data because they have to take data from different sources. And that is one of the reasons why people don't try to segment their users well. They probably send the same email to everybody because it's too difficult. In your experience, what are the best ways to have different kind of segmentation? What kind of segmentation people should focus on and not overdo it?
Yeah, segmentation and targeting is really important. And we've been talking about it, at email conferences and in blog posts for a long, long time. And a lot of people are still batch and blast. And don't get me wrong, you can make a profit with batch and blast, but you're going to have better relationships with your subscribers. You're going to keep those subscribers active for longer if you start targeting the content, segmenting and targeting the content based on what they're interested in. So there's no one right way to segment. And actually, the most successful companies segment in different ways for different email sends based on what it is. So it's really important to think about that. I think a lot of people overlooked the fact that you've got data right there in your email platform that you can use today, right now, to segment your audience. And that is behavioral data based on how they interact with your emails. So things like, open rates with MPP, that's kind of a dicey proposition right now. But definitely click-through rates. People who click on half the emails you send are very different than people who click on 10% of the emails that you send them. So right there, you've got a good view of how their behavior is, and that gives you an idea of what their relationship is with you. So that's a great place to start segmenting on the behavioral information you have right in there. You can also take that down a level. When I worked with Consumer Reports a few years ago, we did a lot of segmentation and targeting based on what specific links people clicked on. So for instance, they had an automotive guide that they published once a year. Anyone who had clicked on a link about automotive, about car things over the course of the year was a natural audience for this automotive guide. So you want to take a look at the data you've got to start with right there in your platform, whether they've clicked and what they've clicked on. And then from there, see what else you can gather and what you can leverage. I think that, in the old days, I remember when I worked with 𝐬𝐿 we had publications that were asking people like 100 questions to get on the email list. And those days are obviously gone. And there was no way we were going to use all 100 of those data points to do anything. So think about what you would use to segment and target, and then try to gather that data. You always have to think about the fact that you're going to treat people differently based on this data in some way. So be smart about what you collect. There's also a huge, huge potential liability today with everything that's going on with privacy laws. To have data that you're not using that could potentially cost you fines if it got breached, you don't want to have that. So only collect the data you're going to use. Definitely use the data that you've got. And like I said, if you start with the behavioral data, that can keep you busy for at least a year, if not longer. And a lot of people overlook that. They don't think of that as data, and yet it is. You can also look that you should have in your system, what's the source of the lead? Where did they come onto the email list? How long have they been on the email list? There's so much data right there. I wrote a series for 𝐭𝐿𝐷 years ago called Really Simple Segmentation that talked about leveraging all this data you've already got in your platform to treat people differently. And again, sometimes you're looking to up the revenue overall. Other times you're just looking to maybe not burn that person out so they'll stay active on your list longer. There's a lot of different but really, really good reasons to segment.
Yeah, that's very helpful. So basically, you're suggesting to segment users on the basis of activity as well as their behavior. You also mentioned a lot about MPP and open rate. I still see a lot of marketers using open rate as a metric to segment users. Can you just describe what are the problems with that and what kind of errors they can lead to if people segment on the basis of open rate even today?
Sure. MPP is really interesting. When it was announced, the email marketing industry kind of went, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. And I have to admit, I was kind of in that crowd. And then the more we thought about it, the more we learned about it, we realized that really wasn't the case. But I think it's important. So, for years, people thought of open rate in the same way they thought of click-through rate. Click-through rate is an absolute metric. There's either a click or there's not. There's a little bit of a bot situation going on now, but it's never been large. Open rate has always been a relative, not an absolute metric, because the way that open rate is tracked, it's a pixel within the email. If someone has images enabled and they scroll past an email in their preview pane, that's going to trigger an open, even though they didn't look at the email. Another person might not have images enabled. They're going to read the whole email 3 times, and you won't get an open on that because they didn't have images enabled. So that's the first thing to know. There's always been a margin of error in open rate. What MPP has done, MPP stands for Mail Privacy Protection. It's an Apple initiative that went into effect, I think, September 2001. And basically, it opens every email that's received by an Apple email client. So if you use an iPhone and you use the email client that comes with the iPhone, I don't do that, but most people do. As soon as that email comes into the inbox, it's going to trigger an open, but it's a false open. No one's actually looked at that email. So a lot of people saw their email rates immediately rise. Some of the email platforms, and I'm not sure how Mailmodo handled it, some of them started trying to identify the MPP opens and separate them from the true opens. That's been a kind of a mixed bag. I had a client recently where their platform was doing that, and what we ended up with was a lot of click to open rates that were above 100% because they never went back. And if someone actually opened after there was an MPP open, they never went back and adjusted that. So there's a lot of issues with it. I think the most important thing to know about open rate is, A, it's not an absolute metric. Just because you see an open doesn't mean that someone actually opened. If you're using that, which a lot of people did for their automations to trigger like reactivation series, if someone hadn't opened in a while, they trigger a reactivation series. Now you're going to have people who haven't actually opened in a while who aren't going to get in that activation series. So you've got to revisit those. So it's just never been a great metric. One thing I would say that is important, that if you're sending to the same list on a weekly basis, while the MPP isn't an absolute metric for opens, it is a relative metric. So it should be about the same open rate from week to week. And if you see it go up or you see it go down, that is directionally a signal you should follow. The other interesting thing about MPP, and then I'll stop, is if your email goes to the junk folder, it doesn't automatically get opened. So if you suddenly see your MPP open rate fall, it could be the start of a deliverability issue that you need to take a look at.
It's a very interesting insight, actually. Like, and to rephrase again, if your MPP opens have decreased, it may be a deliverability problem because many of your emails may go to spam. And Jean, you're absolutely correct. It is even for Mailmodo, it is not possible to measure the actual open rate because even if you remove the MPP opens, it means that you are counting lower opens because many of the users will be opening after that. So even we suggest our customers, our audience, not to use open rate as a metric to measure performance or even to use it for journey or automation. Moving forward, Jean, can you also help us understand the email marketing for strategy for B2C and B2B, and what are the differences? Like as a B2B marketer and as a B2C marketer, what are the different things that they should consider?
Yeah, this is interesting. So, in both cases, you're actually marketing to a person. And I think that's really important to remember. And again, it's always a relationship. I would say the differences between B2B and B2C aren't necessarily as dramatic as some people make them out to be. The strategy is going to be very similar. Probably the tone and voice is going to be different because you want that to match your brand. And typically B2B brands have a little bit of a more serious tone, not always, but usually than B2C brands. So that more goes to your brand. But honestly, the differences between them are not as dramatic as people think. I constantly am working with both B2B and B2C clients. The strategies you're going to use for testing are pretty much the same. It really just comes down to, understanding the brand and the brand's relationship with those folks. The other thing with B2B that you get into if you're doing selling is, you get into the account-based marketing. So you might have multiple people. Some of them, are influencers or referrers. Other people are the ones who would actually sign the contract. So you can do some really interesting things with email around that ABM, account-based marketing. But really the differences aren't that dramatic. I've heard people say you should never use emojis for B2B, but you should always use them for B2C. And I don't agree with that. Really, even every email marketing program is unique. I mean, my consultancy is a boutique consultancy. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And as much as it's really nice to hear people come out with these one-size-fits-all solutions, like, oh, the best day to send is Thursday at 3, those aren't really usually very good. You want to test everything with your own audience and see. And, you know, even the conventional wisdom on things with email, you want to break the rules sometimes. When I worked with Hasbro, we had a campaign that was coinciding with some television ads they were running, and it needed to get out. It was one of those long holiday weekends. And obviously Hasbro, it was toys. So what we wanted is we wanted the kids to see the commercials during their Saturday morning cartoons. And we wanted to get the email in the inbox for the parents a little, you know, a little before that, so that when the kid went to the parent to ask for the toy, the parent would be familiar with the toy. It was kind of this multi-channel, and I'm going way back to like 2003, so it was a long time ago. But I remember that, you know, the email, there was some sort of a glitch. We couldn't get it out until late Friday night. We were concerned about that. We'd never, you know, we had this rule that we didn't send at night, and it was late, and it was ended up being one of our very most successful campaigns. And so I think that's the other thing you want to think about. You know, there aren't any necessarily hard and fast rules. And you want to really think about your program. I worked with another program. It was for people looking to get their GED. They were selling GED services. And it was interesting because we found out that the website saw a spike in traffic between 4 and 6 on weekdays, which didn't necessarily make a lot of sense to us because most of these people were working, but it seemed to be when they had the time to think about this. So we started moving our email sends to that 4 to 6 p.m. weekdays timeframe, and we actually did see an uptick in performance. So there's a lot of the cues you can use to kind of figure things out. But yeah, there's not necessarily hard and fast, and I don't think the differences between B2B and B2C are as stark as people make them out to be. It's all relationship building.
Yeah, probably the right answer to every question is it depends, especially in marketing. Not no
Yes.
size fits all, right? And so, Jean, you have been doing email marketing for 20 years, and you have seen all kinds of ups and more and more ups actually. And today we are seeing a lot of hue and cry about AI and ChatGPT. How do you see that it is going to impact email marketing and marketers in general?
Yeah, ChatGPT has been fascinating. And, you know, one of the benefits of being a member of Only Influencers, which I have been ever since it started, now I'm the GM, but I was a member first, is we talk about these things. We have calls every Thursday. I'll be on the call shortly after this event today. And yeah, we've been talking a lot about it. I think it's fascinating. I think at first, again, it was almost like the sky is falling. I remember on the calls, there was a woman who, very smart marketer, and she was saying that she was using ChatGPT because she thought it was going to write better subject lines and better copy than she could. And we all kind of challenged her on that. And she actually published an article. It's on the OI Metrics blog, oimetrics.com. And it was a mixed bag. Sometimes the OI beat her. Sometimes her stuff beat the AI. I'm sorry. Sometimes the AI stuff beat hers. Sometimes she beat the AI. So I don't think it's necessarily going to be as dramatic as we think. I think the AI is going to be a tool for people who are very, very new for email marketing, who don't know how to craft a subject line or a pre-header text or content. I think it's going to help them dramatically improve the quality of their email marketing. I think for the companies I work with and for people who've been doing this a while, I think that it's helpful. I've been using AI a lot for some initial research. Like I was working with an education company that puts on an annual conference. And so I asked ChatGPT to give me a list of benefits of professional development for educators. And it gave me a list of about 8. And it was great because that formed the basis of my message map. And then I was able to write a series of emails from them to promote the conference with the different, you know, advantages. So I think for research, it's really good. If you're really new to email, I think it can help you with writing pre-headers and subject lines and copy. I don't necessarily think it's going to be the, you know, I don't think it's going to replace copywriters, not at the high level. I don't think it's going to replace marketers. But it's definitely something you should be playing with if you're not. I know I introduced my class to AI, and they were just astonished. They were asking it to write campaign briefs for them, and it really kind of made it easier. And again, they're students, so they're new at this. But I think that there's a lot that you can do with AI. I love the quote that came out: AI is not going to replace you, but someone who knows how to do AI better than you do probably will. So if you haven't been boning up on your prompt engineering, I think that's what they're calling it, you should do that. You should definitely be playing with it.
I completely agree with you. Actually, AI is not going to replace marketers or best copywriters. It is going to help novice or new marketers to do their job better, or in a much faster way. Being said that, Jane, we have a lot of questions from the audience, and I would really be happy if you can answer some of those questions. We'll be putting those questions on the screen. Here it goes. The first question from Mia. So I work on a recruiting company. So our audience is either job seekers or hiring companies. I began email marketing not too long ago, but it has yet to generate a single lead. How would you suggest a recruiting company market their services via email?
Oh, wow. Let me try to give you some tips, because this is more of a project than a question, Mia.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So first of all, you're in a very kind of difficult competitive market, because I don't know about you all. I get notes from recruiters all the time. And I think the biggest problem I see is they don't really know much about me. They'll be like, hey, we have an entry-level email marketing job. Are you interested? No, I'm not. So I think the first thing you should do is do research. And really get to know. I think in your case, the more research you can do, and probably a one-on-one approach might be better, especially if they haven't opted in to receive email from you. There's a great article on the Only Influencers blog by Doug Morneau. And it says, the title is something like, "Is cold email always spam?" And he talks about that. But the best part of the article, which is kind of hidden, is at the end, he has, I don't know, 5 or 8 tips for doing better cold email. And it involves things like researching who you're sending to, making it more of a one-on-one appeal. So I would really try that. I think it's very difficult to do a scattergun approach with something like recruiting. And even if you just segment it down to specific industries, that might help your case. But like I said, if it's not opt-in, that immediately makes your job a whole lot harder. I hope that helps. Check out that article by Doug Morneau on the OI blog. Is cold email always spam? For some tips.
Yeah, thanks for the answer. Here is a question from Tithi. Should we use emojis at all? Very yes or no question.
Yeah, no, it's a great one. I remember like the first Valentine's Day when emojis were a thing, and the few that came in with hearts were like really cute. And now, of course, on Valentine's Day, I think every email I get has a heart in the subject line, which is like, oh, please. You should use emojis when you feel like it's going to help you stand out in the inbox and when it actually supports the subject line. And you should test it. There's some times when it can really kind of be intriguing, and there's other times when it's just really a waste. So you really should be sparse with it. The other thing you have to understand is, you know, I've had people who are like, well, we tested this subject line, and with the emoji, we got a 20% lift in revenue per email. That's great. Those kind of lifts don't tend to last. So it may not mean that every email you send should have an emoji in it, because eventually that effect is going to wear off. But you should definitely look at using them. But again, try to be kind of interesting and creative with it. Try not to do what everybody else does, and try to make sure it somehow relates to your business. You'd be amazed. I have clients where we use emojis, and it's really fun. There's like an Emojipedia where you can look up every emoji that exists, and you can see how it looks in the different email clients, and it can be really fun. So yeah, but don't overuse.
Yeah, I think it is about novelty more than just using emoji or not. How you stand out of in your inbox is more important. You can use personalization, emojis, or different languages. That depends on you.
Yeah.
Here goes the next question.
Don't use hearts on Valentine's Day.
Yeah. So next question is from Aditi. I have recently started a creative agency. How can I leverage email marketing for this service?
Oh my gosh, so many ways. And see, it's kind of fun, because if you started a creative agency, then every email you send is not only trying to gain business for your agency, but is showcasing your expertise. So the first thing I would say is you should pay a lot of attention to the email marketing you send, because people are going to look at that and say, oh, so that's the quality of their work. I would also suggest you try to stand out. So think about what you can do with those emails to make them, better than the average email. Also, a creative agency, you're probably trying to go out to brands. I've had a lot of luck with content marketing. And for my consultancy, which I started more than 20 years ago, I've never really paid for marketing. I speak at conferences, I speak at events, I write blog posts. Mostly I try to just give people insight into how I approach my customers' problems, how we approach trying to optimize. And then if they like that approach, they can hire me. So I would say, definitely use email marketing, but think about using content marketing. So the email marketing you use might be a newsletter that has not only your blog articles, but articles from other people who you think are really smart, whose approach you agree with. I think really with the creative agency, it's mostly about building relationships, which is how I got most of my clients, especially early on, and try to use email marketing to build relationships with these people. And that, again, would be webinars and content marketing rather than kind of a direct sale.
Yeah, since we are running short on time, we will take 2 more questions. But Jean, if any audience wants to reach out to you and for your services or any suggestion, what would be the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, I would love that. Probably the easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. It's J.𝐻N Jennings. You'll see there's a little email emoji next to my name. You can also go to my website, Email Optimization Shop. We have an email there, hello@emailopshop. You can reach me that way. And my phone number is also on the website. So if you want to give me a buzz or schedule a time to talk, I'm always happy to talk email marketing with folks. And if you are, jamming on the content in today's event, which looks like it's going to be great, definitely think about joining Only Influencers, because it's another way to network with people in the industry.
So thanks for that, Jean. Next question is from Preetham. What is the best frequency of emails for automation emails?
It really depends on the content. And I know everybody hates hearing that answer. They want to hear 2 days or 4 days or 6 days. But you really need to think about the content, how that person's going to use that content, and that is what should really drive your frequency. When I was consulting for Verizon, we had people, DSL was rather a new service. We were moving people from dial-up to DSL, and we literally sent them an email series every day. They got a new tip about using their DSL. And one day we covered security, and another day we covered, all sorts of stuff. So you really need to let the content drive the frequency. I have other clients where we have automations and we send every week or every 3 days or every 2 days. A lot of it depends on the sales cycle and the content that you've got. So you really need to let that drive the frequency. I'm sorry. I know it'd be so much easier if I could just give you an answer. Anyone who gives you an answer, they don't really know what they're talking about. Nothing personal against those people, but there's no single answer to this question. There's just
Yeah. We'll take one last question.
Sure.
And but for the audience, there's a lot of other sessions happening. Just after this, we are starting with Lauren Mayer on email deliverability. That is a very important for every marketer, I believe, today. So be here. Here we take the next question from Kat. If open rate is a thing of the past, what alternative metric would you use instead?
Yeah, just a shout out. Definitely stay for Lauren Meyer's presentation. She's one of my favorite people in the industry. She's so smart. She's so nice. So definitely stay for that. Open rate, there's not really an alternative metric for it. I think one of the problems with a lot of people's email marketing programs is they focus too much on diagnostic metrics like open rate and click-through rate, and not enough on things like revenue per email, conversion rate, reach rates, which is how you measure the performance of a series of emails by looking at aggregating the unique opens over the course of those 5 or 6 emails. So there's not really an alternative for open rate. I think you just need to broaden your scope and really, think in terms of, like I said, you need to really be thinking in terms of KPIs. They measure your success. Things like click-through rate and open rate, historically, they can show you what levers to move to try to improve those bottom line metrics. But yeah, there's not really an alternative, unfortunately. And, most people are just using it like they always did, which is good and bad. but it's never been absolute. It's always been relative. So, you know, there's just a larger margin of error now.
Yeah, so the suggestion would be to use something like a conversion rate or revenue per email, per thousand emails. But thanks, Jean. It was a very insightful session, and all of our audience, our team is very grateful to you because you shared all your experiences with us, and I believe that our audience is taking a lot of information and strategy to improve their email marketing. We will be looking forward to listen more to your sessions going forward. But thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you everyone for coming. This has been so much fun. So I hope to see you all at the conference or at Only Influencers, or reach out to me on LinkedIn.